Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Elisa Costante.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. Welcome here. I'm very happy to join you today and to speak about building automation systems and their in security. Before starting diving into building automation security, I want to introduce a bit about the company I work for, just to give you a bit of context. What are the things that we daily work with? SecurityMatters is a company that cares for industrial cyber resilience. So what we do is increase visibility and detection for industrial networks. And I am the head of research. Together with me, there is a team of brilliant persons. And together with building automation, we also look at other topics that are quite interesting and critical in terms of security, like automotive security, or like making intrusion detection system a bit more easy to understand, so adding semantic on top of that, and doing vulnerability discovery for typically industrial control systems. But let's start with smart buildings. So many of you know that smart buildings are very complex systems where a bunch of different things are put together. So for example, you have cameras that can identify the person, that can even authorize people to enter certain areas or not. And all these activities are performed thanks to the fact that there is communication over the network, and there is integration between the different systems, so that, as Chris was mentioning before, if I enter my office, the building knows that it's me. He knows that I come from the south of Italy and I'm cold, and so I typically like a higher temperature in my room. If you wonder how this system works, well, typically, buildings are not new, and building automation systems are also not new. So a building has a fire alarm, they have access control, HVAC for air and ventilation, solar panel, lighting. What does make them smart? Well, what's changing currently is that systems that were before silos, and if a system was taking care of the lighting, it was only taking care of the lighting. Now they are becoming integrated and interconnected. Why? Because so you can basically perform actions that before were not possible. So for example, if the fire alarm goes on, you can actually also open the doors and you can block the lift so that you are sure that safety mechanisms are in place. It's important to know that smart buildings are and will become the core of the smart cities. Countries like the Netherlands are heavily betting on smart cities to increase efficiency, to reduce cost, to make life more comfortable. And tomorrow, the smart building will communicate with other buildings. And as it's happening for some things, maybe you are aware of that, but the Bijlmer Arena, and Amsterdam is a smart city and is really betting on becoming even smarter. And the Bijlmer Arena has a very interesting use case. So the rooftop is all made of solar panel that is actually continuously providing energy for the stadium, but at the same time is also providing energy to the neighbors. So buildings tomorrow will be connected with other buildings, with the infrastructure, and with the whole city. And all of this is cool, isn't it? But today, we are going to speak about security of smart buildings. If you ask your friend or enemy, depends on the case, Google, about building automation attacks, you will get quite some hits. Things are heating up. There are new things coming out every day. Well, researchers, for example, in 2013, I believe, yes, started to look at the security of the smart building at Google in Australia. And they found out that if you manage to enter the building automation system, there is a bunch of information that you can use and that you can retrieve. For example, the blueprint of the building itself. That means if you are a fan of Prison Break, you don't need to print anymore to tattoo your whole body to know how to escape a prison. At the same time, building automation systems, they also take care of heating and ventilation. A building in Finland the heating system of a building in Finland was put down by a DOS attack. Now imagine the impact if indeed HVAC is switched off in very hot place like Dubai or very cold place like Finland. That might be unpleasant, to say the least. The vulnerability trends about building automation is also on the rise. So on the bottom of the slide, you see the trend for ICS. ICS stands for Industrial Control Systems, that are those systems taking care of energy distribution, water distribution, highways. And we see a very similar trends in building automation vulnerabilities. Only in 2017, there were 25, a high boost. Why I want to show this? Because typically, when there are more vulnerabilities discovered, it means that the systems are being attacked. The owner of the system is interested in knowing how secure their system is, and that's why more vulnerabilities are discovered. So this is basically an indicator that things are getting noticed. If you want more evidence about the fact that what I'm saying is important, you can also look at this report from the Memory Institute, and it says quite a lot of interesting things. First of all, that 2.7 billion devices are already connected. So smart buildings and IoT are very connected. If you want your building to be smart, you need to measure as many things as possible. In this room, you need to measure how many persons are here, what is the humidity level, and then you can actually control the building to consume less and to be more comfortable. But also, building automation systems have been known to be involved in data breach and in well-known vulnerabilities. And it also, this report says, is that organizations are not ready to face an attack that is well-targeted against building automation systems. But then, earlier today, it was mentioned that attacks do not just happen. There has to be a model behind them. There is to be a business benefit for the attackers. Why would they attack smart buildings? Well, because they are critical. We are not only speaking of our homes and offices. We are speaking about airports, data centers, big public spaces, and hospitals. Also because it's fun enough, when you think about smart buildings, you think of something new. You think of something brand new. That's actually not true. Our smart building is not that whatever is there is going to be thrown away to make a building smarter. No. What's happened is that the legacy system behind the smart buildings are going to be upgraded or, worse, interconnected. Now, typically, legacy systems have very few poor and close to none security in mind. No authentication, no encryption, sometimes not even segmentation. And then there is the big issue of connectivity, which is necessary, but more connectivity also means more vulnerability, and then you have default ports, default credentials, and then an attack like the Mirai botnet can happen. To help me driving you towards the conversation today that also aims at showing you some attacks that can be done to smart buildings, I want to discuss a bit how network in a smart building looks like. Also, we come from a company that is heavily focused on network monitoring, so that's what we are good at. Well, in building automation network, what you typically have are 3 layers. You have the field automation and the management layer. In field and automation, you install your building automation system. So if it's about the air conditioning, you will have your fan, lighting, energy. If you have access control, you will have tokens, cards, biometrical recognizer. And you also have the surveillance camera, which is a part of the building automation system. What happens now is that all these systems do not only need to communicate between themselves, they are not silos anymore. They need to communicate with the other system and with the central management. This is necessary to improve efficiency, to increase monitorability, to be sure that, for example, the HVAC can take the energy from the solar panel and not from the grid anymore. And if you look at what kind of protocols are used in this level, what you can see is that on the bottom layers, the orange line, is field-specific protocols. Protocols that probably you never heard of, something like Modbus, Longtalk, BACnet MSTP. And on top, you actually have IP protocols that use TCP/IP, like BACnet IP, which is the king of the protocols used in building automation system. But you also have FTP, RTP, HTTP. If you notice, there is no HTTPS, no RTPS, no FTPS. So let's look at what attack and defense are out there. So how dangerous can it be if the HVAC goes down? Well, there are some attacks already happening. For example, the thermostat used to measure the temperature. Typically, that is an IoT device. They are cheap, and they are supposed to only measure data values. Well, those devices were attacked to basically gain information, exfiltrate data, but they can actually also be used as a botnet. They can just start generating more data traffic than they are supposed to. And information about the HVAC can be used, for example, to increase the temperature in a room or in a data center. If the temperature in a data center is increased, how much time do you think the data center can stay online? Seconds, minutes? 60 seconds. Yeah, and then the safety mechanism will kick off, and the data center is offline for protecting at least the hardware, which means at least there are offline time, cost, headaches. What can you do to defend against this? Well, know what your systems are doing and see if there is some critical change in critical devices. And for example, an IoT device is only supposed to do certain things, limited things. Why would an IoT device to measure temperature in a bank or in a data center be connected to the internet? That's not necessary. You should be aware of that. You should block that. And also, the network of the building automation should not, at any time, be able to communicate with the IT network, with your offices, and with the laptop of your employees. And let's also look at access control. So access control, it's very funny to look at the insecurity of security systems, but it's something I find always funny. So what is funny about credential access control system is that the card and the reader, they have a very channeled and secure channel. But then on the network, once you have passed your card and you are allowed, on the network, actually, the information passes quite in clear. So if an attacker is on the network, he will be able to know which credentials is enabled to go in what area of the building. And at the same time, if he's skilled enough and if the system is not well protected, it can actually block or allow the access to sensitive areas to, for example, unauthorized. There was a research from the F-Secure team, which actually showed how by having only a card from a hotel, you can generate a master card, a master key for all the other rooms in the same hotel. What can you do to protect from these kind of things? Well, first of all, try to understand if the system that you have in place in your building is actually secure. If encrypted is a possibility, it should be in use. And otherwise, you should be able to monitor your network, to identify intruders, and to identify if a certain credential is used or abused in a different area of your building. And finally, I go to my preferred building automation system or subsystem, that is the surveillance system. Do you know how many protocols and services are enabled if you buy on the internet a CCTV camera? And I'm not speaking of the IoT system, cameras that you can buy in Media Market. Like, let's say that you order one that you see in the banks. Well, it comes by default with a set of services. Can you name some? Enabled by default. Telnet, HTTP, FTTP, RTP and RTSP, those are necessary. UPnP, the universal plug and play. Now, if we are at home, having the universal plug and play is very interesting because then we can discover the elements we have in our own network. But if you are in a bank, having a camera that has UNP enabled means that it will disclose a lot of information over the network about what the camera is doing and why it's doing and on what port it is listening. All this information is not necessary for the functioning of that system. The fault services enabled can be reduced. What an attacker could do, well, again, the camera can be used to be a botnet. And also, cameras, they consume a lot of bandwidth. You can just change the setting of a camera from normal recording to super high definition, and it can basically almost do a self-DOS attack to your network. You can turn the camera off for a little bit, enter, steal something, or enter in a room you are not supposed to be, and then put it on again. Or delete some recordings to avoid that there is evidence. Well, what to do in this case? First of all, be sure not to have the default settings. Be sure that services that you don't need and that are dangerous and that are vulnerable, like Telnet and UPnP, are disabled. And be sure that if there are some commands, operation on the network, for example, tear down the camera, switch off for a bit, or change a configuration parameter, those are things shouldn't happen normally, and if it happens, they should trigger your attention. Now, have you watched Ocean 11? How many of you? OK. Well, when we started this research, it's like, OK, is it possible? Can we actually trick it? Can we make it possible that the security officer that is looking at the camera is actually looking at something that we recorded before and that is not the current footage? So that's what we, with my team, with some of the students that are here and are working with us, try to do in the last months. And before going to the details on how we made this attack, I want to show to you a bit how surveillance systems work. So of course, you have cameras. In some installation we are monitoring, you have up to 300, 400 cameras. This camera, they speak to an element that is called the network video recorder that is actually used to stream the footage and also to record it for forensic purposes. Then, of course, you have network switch that can be there or can be on the other side as well. And you have local monitoring and storage servers. The communication from the camera and to the camera mainly should happen with two protocols, RTSP and RTP. And I will discuss a bit of the details of these two protocols in the next slides. Well, RTSP stands for Real-Time Streaming Protocol. It is a TCP-based protocol, and it basically is used at the beginning to establish a connection from the camera and the NVR in such a way that the NVR knows what is the camera it should rely on. And this protocol is only designed to exchange parameter information and not to exchange data. So if you have a pickup, if you have a network capture of RTSP, you will not see the footage. You will only see information about the cameras and the NVR. And it is mandatory to have RTSP messages and the connection established before the actual footage can be sent over the network. After this connection is established, then you can have RTP. RTP is the real-time protocol. It's based on UDP, so it's connectionless. Because it has to be real-time, you don't want to have the burden of a connection. And this unidirectional. So you typically have from a server to a client. So the camera is the server, the client is the NVR. There is a secure version of RTP, but so far, we never saw it. So once again, the camera uses RTSP, the connection is established, and the TCP channel is formed. Then it starts send the RTP messages that actually contain the footage. And from time to time, the NVR sends back RTSP message with a very nice message type that is called get parameter. It's basically asking a refreshment that keep alive to the camera, like, tell me again, once again, who are you, and what are you sending me, and to what port? Now, the attack that we performed is based on the following steps. So first of all, we established a man in the middle to be sure that we could see the information going, the TCP connection going from the camera to the NVR. Then, when the RTP traffic was there, we could actually sniff the traffic and record a piece of the traffic of an interesting part of the day where nobody was in the place we wanted to enter. And then we were patient, and we waited for the parameter from the NVR that was saying, get parameters. Sorry, the command that was saying, get the parameters. What we did, thanks to the man in the middle, we replaced this command with another command that is also enabled by the RTSP, which is a tear down. And it basically tells to the camera to stop the communication. And at that point, since the camera was not sending the real footage anymore, so the attacker could send the footage that has been recorded before. So let's see a view on the network messages. So first, you have the communication with the correct communication. The man in the middle, he enables to change the message with the command that he wants. He sends the tear down. The connection is dropped. The camera gets offline, and the attacker can send on the message that he wants. And since I think that maybe you won't believe me, I'm going to show to you the attack in action with some small videos. Well, first, as I said, we had to do the man-in-the-middle attack. We did that by using EtherCap. How many of you know EtherCap? All right, great. Well, it's very nice to have like a tool and plugins that allow you to do all sorts of attacks. And then we did the break communication. So we were sure every packet that we were seeing, we were analyzing it. If the message was the get parameter, we were replacing it with a tear down, as I mentioned before. And then in yellow, you see the replayed footage, the one that we were replaying. And in blue, you see the real footage with the ninja student that was stealing some very valuable information from our network. So fiction and real life are joining together. And it's possible to do this and many more difficult and, let's say, dangerous operations on those networks. And I want to conclude with a bit of information on what we do. The attack is the fun part. Then we need to do the protection. So SecurityMatters is working on the main product. It's called Silent Defense, which is a network monitoring solution. What we do, we transform raw network traffic into valuable and actionable information. And we do that by applying a bunch of different techniques that go from anomaly detection, from threat hunting. We actually do asset monitoring as well. So we provide a complete view on the elements that are on the network, on their activities, on their flows. And together with my team, we try every day to work on these different verticals to respond to real problems from the industry. So finally, key takeaways from this presentation. First, about the landscape. So building automations, smart buildings rely on legacy systems which are vulnerable, and those vulnerabilities can only increase if we keep ignoring the problem. And that is key to have visibility over the network, to be sure of what your elements are supposed to do and if they are behaving according to what their role within the network is. And finally, to be able to identify attackers and problems on your network, you also need to do detection. So to identify everything that is strange, everything that is an anomaly, everything that is an indicator of possible problems, like communication patterns that shouldn't be there. So, thank you.
Any questions for her?